Nansen basically helps on-chain investors find out what's happening on-chain. So what that means is they can discover what the smart money is investing in. We calculate things like P&L per address, and we can rank what are the most profitable traders based on that. Now there's literally millions of tokens, and that means you can't like manually curate everything. So we now have like AI-driven tagging of the new tokens that are launching. Depending on kind of what you're bullish on or like which narrative or category, you can very quickly filter down like these are all of the tokens that were launched in the last 7 days within that category.
Can you track it from like who launched it, for example?
We can. If you use Nansen for Solana, you can see, oh, here's an address that bought all these tokens, and that address also deployed these other tokens. So you need proof of reserves, and then you need proof of liabilities to get proof of solvency, because you could have lots of funds sitting in wallets, but then you have huge liabilities on those.
We're in Dubai with Crypto News Z in collaboration with Global Blockchain Show taking place here in Dubai in December. Today I am with Alex from Nansen. So I guess let's start with what Nansen is for those who don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nansen basically helps on-chain investors find out what's happening on-chain. So what that means is they can discover what the smart money is investing in. We calculate things like P&L per address, and we can rank what are the most profitable traders based on that. So we can use that to find out what are the most interesting tokens to look at any given time. You can also track your portfolio across all of the chains that matter. And quite recently, we've also added staking. So you can stake different tokens with Nansen itself.
Oh, yeah. I remember we talked about Nansen recently, few months ago in Thailand, and you told me about it, and it just feels like it's like the superpower that people can acquire and have like more visibility on everything that is going on. Are there any new trends happening now? Because you told me a few back then.
Yeah, it's right. Nansen is kind of like an Iron Man suit. It's kind of how I think about it. If you're an investor, it sort of supercharges your skills and your abilities. The biggest thing we've added lately is Solana support. This is something our users have been like screaming for a very long time. And for various reasons, it took a long time to add it. So that means you can kind of monitor real-time trading activity on Solana. And so, of course, meme coins is a big area there. There's also, generally speaking, a trend towards multi-chain, right? So you're seeing Base has been really big for the Ethereum ecosystem. You're seeing other chains like Ronin for gaming, even chains like Near that many people might not know, but they have, I think, tens of millions of monthly active users on different apps. So I think there are many different interesting trends going on. We try to focus mostly on like the fast-moving stuff. So if I would kind of bring up Nansen, I guess we would sort of find out what today's trend is. If that makes sense.
I see. Yeah, more short term.
And exactly. And so sort of the fast-moving stuff is kind of where we play mostly. But you can also monitor like long-term trends in terms of which chains people are using and that kind of stuff.
Interesting. What's something that recently was trending?
Well, you have like the AI coins like GOAT. Right? That was a big one.
I thought of asking you about GOAT actually.
Moodang,
so that's funny.
Moodang as well. I got lucky and discovered Moodang with Nansen early. and GOAT was in there as well. Yeah, and then what else have we been seeing?
There's these new AI tokens now that like have been getting hot. Is this like a new thing?
So one thing we've done actually is we've added better automated sector classification for tokens, because now there's literally millions of tokens. And that means you can't like manually curate everything. So we now have like AI-driven tagging of the new tokens that are launching. So you try to very quickly classify them. So for example, AI tokens is like a sector that you can monitor.
Like segmenting the...
Correct. Yeah. And so depending on kind of what you're bullish on or like which narrative or category, you can very quickly filter down like these are all of the tokens that were launched in the last 7 days within that category across all of the chains that we support, for example. So
can you track it from like who launched it, for example?
We can. Yeah. And so if you use if you use Nansen for Solana, you can see, oh, here's an address that bought all these tokens, and that address also deployed these other tokens, which can kind of be a sign that it's like an insider coin type of thing. So I actually think that meme coins are quite interesting from an on-chain perspective, because there's no fundamentals. So there's no like white paper to read or like, let me understand this like complex protocol. You just literally see who is buying it.
Yeah.
And then do you like the meme? Like, do you think Mudang is cute? That's like pretty much the only fundamentals research you do on a meme coin. Do you like the meme? And then who is buying it? And do you believe that the people who bought that tend to hit the right meme coins, right? So that's kind of the principle. And with Nansen, you can track, like I said, P&L. You can also track win rate of individual addresses.
Oh, wow. And that's impressive.
Yeah. So you can see like this address has like a 78% win rate in terms of their trades. And we have a new ranking that's coming out of smart money. So you can go in and see what are the most profitable addresses in the last 7 days or 30 days, 90 days. And yeah, it's pretty cool because I have it available in dev, like in my version of Nansen. So I've been looking at it, and you see sort of well-known crypto fund names like Multicoin, Defiance, Blockchain Capital, because we can tag them, right? We tag them in Nansen. But you also see individuals with like, I think there's one called aptosgod.eth, and people like, I don't know who they are, but they have a great track record of trading. So yeah.
Can you imagine like this is probably related to being in the right group chats and spending like so much time online, so you see the information and then make a call and have good judgment over it, I guess. Is there a way, or like have you thought of adding a way to in the most irrational ways that this is backed, these new tokens, like have a way of like, oh, this one popped up because someone tweeted this, for example?
Yeah, that's a good idea. It would be nice to have like a summary of like, why is this coin like hot right now? I think you probably have to merge different sources of information, but at least on chain, you should be able to summarize like, this one is pumping and it looks like it's because this influential wallet bought it like 2 hours ago. So that information we have, and you can get it today in our product, but we could probably do a better job at like summarizing it for the user. So it's like a snippet and you just get it immediately.
This reminds me of this. There's a K-pop artist that recently launched the APT song, and then APT Aptos went up. And so people thought it was because of that. There was no like way of proving it, that it was correlated, but like it kind of happened in the same day.
Yeah.
And honestly, like when I saw that song, it just came up on my Spotify.
You're like, oh, okay, I'm buying Aptos.
No, I thought like immediately like, oh no, like Aptos is gonna go up. So yeah, like I wonder like if there was a way of correlating these things, even if they're like, you know, like.
So it is one thing we do. One thing I noticed over the years is when a token pumps or dumps, especially when it dumps, the meme is like, who sold, right?
Yeah.
And so when you go to token god mode, which is where you look up tokens in Nansen, literally the first thing you see is who sold or who bought actually. So this is like, this probably explains, you know, somewhere between 50 and 80% of like why a token pumped, because at the end of the day, someone bought it or someone sold it. And so you can kind of like construct the narrative based on that. So you say, oh, it's because this fund just sold a bunch of tokens that were unlocked. Okay, now you understand why. And then you can think like, is this bad long term, or is this an opportunity to buy? Or you know, you can make up your own mind.
It's super interesting. I'm also thinking here, like for investors, like looking for projects that might be more promising. Like if you can see who has invested, because you know, like there's the smaller funds sometimes tend to like piggyback. Is it used like this as well? Like is this one of the use cases?
It's used for like copy trading a lot.
Oh yeah, of course.
So you see like, oh, you know, Defiance, they have a great track record. They bought this DeFi coin. I'm using it as an example, no investment advice. Then I'll buy the same coin because I will assume they've done, you know, their DD, they have an investment thesis. And so it's kind of interesting because the dynamic is such that these funds in a way kind of benefit from that too, right? Because if they buy something and other people want to buy it because they bought it, it's not such a bad idea to be labeled in Nansen. Like one question I get a lot is whether people dislike that we label their addresses.
Yeah, obviously.
Right?
Revealing.
Yeah, but I think it's a bit subtle. Like the initial instinct is like, we don't want to be labeled. But then I think many funds and market makers are realizing that it's kind of a good marketing tool.
It's influence.
It's influence.
Their trust.
It's
influence.
branding. It's awareness, right? Like one of the market makers that we have always had good coverage of is Wintermute.
Okay.
And they're very active. They're one of the top market makers. They really like have grown a lot over the last years. And I think, I don't know if they sort of consciously have made this decision, but they seemingly don't have a problem with us labeling their wallets. And it's probably not bad for business either, because many of these token projects will look in Nansen what's happening. And if you keep seeing Wintermute, like Wintermute is like the active, DEX trading participant, or it's the largest buyer, or they have the most volume, that kind of stuff, then you might think of Wintermute first when you think of a market maker.
Yeah.
And similarly with funds, right? If, like you said, if you have influence and others are looking at who are the top holders of an address, of a token, you might attract other investors to the same
You
token.
have scores for these funds as well?
We don't have scores. We have P&L for their individual addresses.
Okay.
And we're gonna get P&L for their collective addresses across all of their holdings.
Okay.
That we have tracking for. But it's an interesting question, because maybe we should have some kind of scoring that is. But then you get. I was actually looking literally last night at a spreadsheet of scoring of market makers. So it is something that people do.
So do you have scores for market makers?
So this was not ours. This is just something that has been passed around between projects. And you might have seen this before. People make these like VC rankings. There's like the S tier.
Yeah.
This one was like the top ranking was like Chad. These are the 3 Chad market makers.
Okay.
And then it goes all the way down to.
Who was at the top?
I don't know if I should mention.
I mean, it's not your list.
It's not my list. Yeah, Wintermute was at the top. And,
the very first.
There were, I think, 2 or 3 market makers at the top. Wintermute was in there. Yeah. And that's maybe it's an example of how they are very active on chain.
Being
they
active
have a good
definitely
brand.
helps. Yeah.
Yes.
Who were the other 2?
I can't remember.
You don't remember?
I genuinely can't remember.
They're not that well known.
I mean, I remember many of the names, but I can't remember which ones were actually at the very top tier.
Okay.
And I don't want to.
You send me after.
I don't want to lie. Yeah, I'll share it later.
Yeah. Curious. I love seeing how stuff gets ranked, and also I think ranking things, it creates competitiveness for good stuff, hopefully.
Yes.
In this case, it's just a matter of being right and making money, which is not necessarily the greater good.
Yeah. I would love to make like an actual quantitative on-chain driven ranking of market makers. So another fund or another market maker that almost no one knows about, but we saw on chain being super active in the last years, is a firm called SCP.
SCP.
I think it's Symbolic Capital Partners.
Okay.
And no one really knew about them, but they were extremely active on chain, and we were tracking them for many, many years, like 5-6 years, or maybe 4 or 5 years. But there might have been people who have found out about them just from using Nansen.
And they were beyond being active. Were they doing well?
Yeah, I mean, and they're a market maker, right? So they're not really driving for P&L. They're driving for like volume,
right?
And being delta neutral and that kind of stuff. But yeah, they were. So if you I think one way you could rank market makers is probably just volume. It's not a perfect metric, but you could do that.
What other ways would you?
You could also rank them just on holdings, like how much assets they control. But of course, I mean, this brings up the important point also that on-chain doesn't show the full story, because you also have funds sitting on centralized exchanges, right? Which we can't track. Like we can see your deposits into Binance, but we can't see what you do on Binance, as an example.
Could it be also like, for example, that for this to be accurately measured, you would need to have access to all the addresses. So it would be then beneficial for them to actually reveal all
Totally.
their addresses.
This is what we did with exchanges, because exchanges after FTX had a lot of issues with trust. And so people were worried, is Binance the next exchange is going to collapse? And so Binance and others put out proof of reserves, right? And what we did, because we have the tracking capabilities, we just reached out to all the exchanges and we said, hey, we'll make a dashboard for you. We're an independent third party. You're not going to pay us. You just give us the addresses and we will display that in an aggregated dashboard. And so people still look at those for like crypto.com, Binance, many of the exchanges. And so you could do a similar thing with market makers. In fact, maybe I'll go down that list that I found, the spreadsheet, and like ask all of them, hey, do you want to disclose? Not everyone will want to do it, but I think some will, and it's going to be good for their business.
I think it's good for business. I mean, even let's go back to meme coins, because there is a point here that could be made. I think when Murad's addresses got revealed and people could actually trace what he was saying could actually be backed up.
That's right.
Then that increased the trust, this God mode that he's like, this aura that he has built for himself. I mean, even if you don't believe him, you could just go and see it.
Yeah.
And the same that happens with an individual that then builds so much influence they denied could happen with any company if they were to do the same.
And so people like him, I think of them as like on-chain influencers.
Yeah.
Right. And there are even examples of people who are not necessarily that loud on social media, but they have influence through their wallets because people track their wallets. Yeah. And so these are like genuine on-chain influencers, right? They don't even need a Twitter
address. They don't need to tweet. They don't need to do anything.
They don't talk. They only act. They only trade. And so, but they have I think those people are quite influential.
It's incredible to see how the dynamic of influence, network, and because it's all intrinsical to money in crypto.
Yeah.
And how it has developed over time, and the way we measure, say, like analytics, performance, whatever, like influence, in crypto is intrinsically different. Like the value of what someone does, obviously on chain, is more valuable than what they would tweet, let's say. And how this has been evolving to me is really interesting. And I think like Nansen is like a powerhouse to show that, right? Because if someone, like exactly what we just said, like if someone is not even, you might not even speak the same language, so you could see how someone is acting, and the behavior itself is influencing, and being right sort of is what builds that influence. I wonder what happens next, because like we're always building, technology is evolving, there is AI now, there's like so much going on. I wonder where it goes from here. Like, have you thought about that?
You mean with regards to like on-chain tracking, or? Yeah,
so the more you can track and the more people get interested into, say, like in this case, like revealing their wallet addresses, and even as a company building your influence like this.
Yeah.
So for example, crypto.com wallets having more influence than their followers on Twitter,
Yeah, totally. So when we launched the company and I did interviews and so on, I think a lot of people were just expecting that people would be uncomfortable with their wallets being public. And because of that, we would have a hard time like tracking people. But I think it's almost like we've seen the opposite, that it's just becoming the norm, that everyone knows that they're being tracked on chain. So they're like less worried about it to some extent.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that's going away. I do think that you do need privacy in blockchain applications as well, and payments and things like that. But I don't really see a world where all of our transactions are private. I think probably the world will look more like, here's this kind of smaller pool of transactions that we're making for like daily actions and daily payments and whatnot. That's private. And then like large companies, exchanges and so on, you will still see what they do on chain. That would be kind of the better. Like, I would like to have privacy for individuals, but I want to have transparency for corporations.
Yeah.
right? And so that's why I think one of the big benefits of blockchains is that they are transparent. And so it's not like with a bank, you have to just trust me, bro. Like they have your money and they have to do some reporting, but at the end of the day, you don't really know, right? And so the beauty of blockchains is that it is transparent. So, when FTX collapsed, we could monitor, funds coming out of the exchange, even when they said that they had closed withdrawals, right? And we were like, hey, Sam, you said that you had shut off the withdrawals, but we're still seeing outflows. Like, what's going on? Oh, and it turns out that they were giving money to the Bahamas KYC'd accounts because they were worried about the regulators there.
Oh my God.
And you can see this on chain, right? So there's full transparency. You can't hide from this stuff. And that to me is a good thing. But of course, you do need some kind of privacy preserving technology as well. I think mostly for individuals and like personal use of crypto.
Yeah, we've talked about before, maybe with some previous guests about, like having a social wallet, having a private wallet, having somewhat of an influence wallet, if you may, if that's what you do. So you could have wallets for different purposes. And in this case, like if someone is small but is trying to become like somewhat of an influencer, let's say, with their transactions, they could use it that way as well. Yeah. I wonder, so obviously like for security of everyone, I wonder if there should be something in place that even like the proof of funds, let's say. I had Dima here from Hacken earlier.
Yeah,
and
he's right.
And he said that like one of the things that people are still, like even after FTX, they're not demanding proof of reserves from exchanges. And from his perspective, which I trust, this should be in place. So I wonder, like, if with all this information, if there are certain aspects of information that we should, like baseline demand from certain projects.
I mean, I recommended this to the MAS in Singapore, that when they give a license to an exchange, they should ask for all the addresses to all their cold wallets and hot wallets.
Yeah.
And that seems like a very small ask to me,
Yeah.
And so far, I haven't seen anyone actually do it. But this would be a good way to drive transparency, I think.
Yeah. Beyond this, do you have any other ideas that would, on the topic of security, do you have any other ideas that would sort of like prove that I'm talking about exchanges, but it could even be something else that is more trustworthy?
So you need proof of reserves, and then you need proof of liabilities to get proof of solvency.
Yeah.
At the end. So proof of reserves, just to be very clear, is not enough to show, because you could have lots of funds sitting in wallets, but then you have huge liabilities on those, And so there's no good like on-chain way to do proof of liabilities, but there are certain methods that some exchanges do use. I think Kraken has a system for this. I think Binance has that as well. And so I don't know if this needs to be regulated. It seems like almost the exchanges to some extent have managed to sort of self-organize around this.
Okay,
almost because the market needed it after FTX. Because if they didn't do it, people would just not trust them and they would withdraw their funds, which obviously the exchanges don't want.
By this, you mean like the ones that are already in place?
Yeah.
Because obviously like the new one, like there's so many new exchanges this year. For the new ones, you see this also playing out, or? Well,
if you're new, then in a way, the bar is even higher, right? To gain trust. I mean, to me, it's I'm like less interested in centralized exchanges, because I think everything's going on chain in the long run.
Yeah.
So, if you look at the largest centralized exchanges, they pretty much all have their own chain at this point, right?
Yeah.
So even Kraken now came out with Inc., their own like OP stack based L2. Binance is BNB chain. They were kind of a pioneer in that regard. Coinbase has Base.
Yeah.
Bybit has Mantle, and so on and so forth. So, I think on a long enough time horizon, every asset will be tokenized, and that every asset will be on chain. And I also think that you'll have the deepest liquidity on chain, which means that when you trade, you don't go to a centralized exchange. You basically go to a DEX or a DEX aggregator to trade, because that's where you're going to get the best price. Mm-hmm. So I think already now DEXs have a market share of something like 20% in volume. A lot of that is driven by Uniswap, but also Jupiter and the DEXs that Jupiter resolves to, because it's a DEX aggregator. But I think that, that's kind of the most important flippening, like when DEXs take over for centralized exchanges. Mm-hmm. And that could happen, sooner than we think.
I could keep talking with you about this for hours, but we need to wrap it up. For everyone watching, where can they find you? Just
so
this camera.
They can go to Nansen.ai to use our product. It's a needed product if you trade on-chain, if you make any investments on-chain. You can also set up your portfolio with Nansen across all of the chains that matter. And you can stake your tokens as well with Nansen now.
Alex, thank you.
Thank you so much.